Good morning or good evening or whatever we're calling the time when the sky turns from charcoal to a slightly lighter shade of ash. This is Rusty coming to you live, or at least as live as a man in a concrete bunker can be, on the 547th day of the long white. If you're still out there, if you're still twisting that dial looking for a voice that isn't just the scream of the wind through the pressure valves, then pull your blankets a little closer. We've got a few hours of power left in the cells before I have to go back to the hand cranks, so let's spend them together. I looked out the reinforced observation slit this morning and it's still there. The pale horizon. It's a name I started using a few months back and it seems to have stuck in my head. There used to be a skyline out there. I remember the way the glass towers of the city would catch the sunset, reflecting oranges and purples so bright they felt like a physical heat on your skin. Now it's just a smudge. The earth and the sky have finally finished their divorce and decided to stop speaking to each other. There is no line where the ground ends and the clouds begin. It's just one continuous suffocating dome of featureless white. The sun is nothing more than a pale, heatless coin behind a mile of frozen vapor. It doesn't rise and it doesn't set. It just haunts the sky for a few hours before the world goes back to being a grave. 1.5 years. It's 18 months of breathing recycled air and watching the frost creep further down the interior walls of the transmitter room. I remember the first month. We all thought it was a volcanic winter, something that would blow over once the atmosphere settled. We were waiting for the spring. We had our seed packets ready, we had our summer clothes packed in boxes in the attic, just waiting for the thaw. But the thaw never came. The mercury just kept dropping until it fell off the bottom of the map and then the silence started. That's the thing they don't tell you about the apocalypse. It isn't loud. It isn't a bang. It's a quiet, cold shiver. It's the sound of every engine in the world freezing solid at the same time. I've been monitoring the shortwave frequencies, and I've got some updates for those of you in the northern sectors, or what's left of them. The latest word from the scout teams out of New Ember is that the ice shelf has officially overtaken the old interstate bridge. They're saying the snow is packed so hard now it's basically granite. If you're trying to move between bunkers, don't bother with the surface. The winds are clocked at 90 miles an hour near the coast, and the wind chill is enough to shatter bone. Stay in the tunnels. I know the air is getting thin in the sublevels, and I know the mold is a problem, but it's better than the alternative. I heard a rumor through the wire that Sector 4 tried to send a party out to the old hydroelectric dam to see if they could kickstart the turbines. They haven't checked back in for 3 weeks. We have to assume the pale horizon took them. That's what it does. It doesn't kill you quickly. It just waits for you to get tired, waits for you to close your eyes for a second, and then it wraps you in that white sheet and forgets you were ever there. I spent about an hour today just staring at a picture of a tree. It was an old Polaroid I found tucked into the back of a manual for the backup generator. Just a regular oak tree in the middle of a park. I found myself trying to remember what the color green actually feels like. Not just what it looks like, but the vibration of it. The way a forest feels alive and busy and warm. Everything now is so still. Even the wind feels dead, like it's just the ghost of the atmosphere rattling the bones of the world. I find myself talking to the radio equipment more than I'd like to admit. I call the transmitter Old Bessie and I find myself apologizing to her when the signal drops. That's what 18 months of isolation does to a man's head. You start looking for humanity in the hum of a vacuum tube. The news from the Southern Transit isn't much better. We had a brief burst of data from the Antarctic relay station. Ironic, isn't it, that they were the best prepared for this, and they're reporting that the cloud cover is global. There are no holes in the sky. Not a single patch of blue has been seen by a human eye in 14 months. They're calling it the absolute minimum, the point where the planet's heart rate is slowed down to a crawl. They think the oceans are freezing deeper than we initially calculated. If that's true, we aren't just looking at a long winter. We're looking at a permanent change. A new era. We are the inhabitants of a snowball spinning through a dark room. I want to talk to the parents for a second. I know there are kids down there in those bunkers who have forgotten what it's like to run without a heavy coat. I know there are toddlers who have never seen a flower. Tell them stories, don't let the memory of the sun die out just because it's hiding. Tell them about the smell of cut grass. Tell them about the way the sand feels between your toes at the beach. We have to keep those ghosts alive, or else we're just animals waiting for the fire to go out. My fire is still going though. It's a small one, just a glowing coil and a space heater, but it's mine. I sit here and I watch the dust motes dance in the orange light, and for a second I can pretend I'm back in my living room and the world is still loud and messy and beautiful. I received a signal from a lone operator yesterday, somewhere out near the ruins of the old salt mines. He was crying. He said he found a grocery store that hadn't been fully looted, but everything inside was frozen into a single solid block of ice. Rows and rows of food, perfectly preserved, and he couldn't get to a single bite of it. He sat there with a hammer for 3 hours trying to chip out a can of peaches until his hands went numb and he had to retreat. That's the cruelty of this world. It's all still there, everything we built, everything we made. It's just trapped under a layer of glass we can't break. If you're listening in Sector 9, keep an eye on your oxygen scrubbers. The word is that the seals on the 2022 models are starting to fail under the extreme cold. We lost a whole family in the burrow near the ridge because their seals cracked and let the nitrogen in. If you hear a high-pitched whistling near your air intake, don't wait. Patch it with whatever you have. Wax, grease, old rags, just don't let the outside in. The outside is not our friend anymore. It's a predator. It's a slow, patient predator that wants to turn your blood into slush. Sometimes I wonder if I'm the only one left talking. I see the little needles on my console twitch when I speak, so I know the signal is going out. I know the electrons are jumping off the antenna and screaming into the blizzard, but I haven't heard a voice in 3 days. The last one was a woman's voice, very faint, repeating a set of coordinates over and over again. I looked them up on my old paper maps. They're in the middle of the Atlantic Ocean, or where the ocean used to be. There's nothing out there but icebergs the size of Kentucky. I don't know who she was or who she was calling to, but she sounded so calm. It was the calmness that scared me. It was the sound of someone who had stopped fighting the pale horizon and had finally invited it in. But we aren't doing that today. Not on my watch. We're gonna keep the heaters running, and we're gonna keep the lights on, even if they're just dim and flickering. We're gonna remember the heat. I want you to close your eyes and think about a July afternoon. Think about the way the asphalt used to shimmer. Think about the sweat on the back of your neck. Hold on to that. Wrap it around you like a cloak. The world is white, and the world is cold, and the world is very, very quiet. But as long as this radio is humming, there's at least one corner of the desert that hasn't gone silent. This is Rusty, broadcasting from the end of the line. Stay warm, stay alive, and for God's sake, keep your eyes on the horizon even if there's nothing there to see. I'll be here when the light changes. If the light changes, end of transmission for the hour. I'm gonna go see if I can find a way to make this coffee taste like something other than boiled rust. Stay tuned. Stay hopeful. I'm still here. We're still here.